Last year, my brother was murdered right outside our front door. He was only 16 years old. My mother and I had warned him over and over again that he was getting caught up with the wrong crowds and that it was going to catch up with him sooner or later. He didn't listen. He started by breaking into cars, but soon graduated into dealing meth. And he was murdered outside our door by another dealer who was paranoid that my brother would turn him into the cops. But this story isn't about my brother. No, this story is about the little girl who saved him. Let me explain. You see, my brother is buried at St. John's Cemetery right off of I-80. It's also where my father is buried. He died of a drug overdose when I was just 5 years old. As you can see, drugs have done irreparable damage to my family. That's why I'll never touch the stuff. There's nothing more evil in this world. After my brother was murdered, we bought a plot in the cemetery not far from my father with a headstone that read, "To Johnny Ortiz, a son and brother gone too soon, you will live on forever in our hearts." In total, the funeral arrangement cost me and my mother almost $10,000, and we refused to let my brother's gangbanger friends help out. My mother would not allow drug money to taint the final memory that she would ever have of my brother. She wanted her son to be buried pure. The day of the funeral was the most difficult day of my life. I couldn't truly grieve because I had to be strong for my mother. She couldn't stop crying, and she broke down so often that the priest couldn't even finish the service. My mother just kept repeating, "I can't believe he's gone. I can't believe he's gone." The days immediately following his death were the hardest. For some reason, I felt like Johnny was still with us, like all around us. It was weird. Let me just say right now that I don't believe in that paranormal stuff. I think it's corny. But there were things that happened that I just couldn't explain. For example, the first night after the funeral, I missed my brother so much that I slept in his room in his bed. I woke up the next morning and went to work, and when I returned home that afternoon, his bed was completely made. Now, I know what you're thinking. Obviously, my mom made the bed. After all, she was the only one at home that day. So I asked her just to make sure. But it wasn't her. My mother had been in her room crying all day. So much so that she hadn't even eaten or gone to the bathroom. She was completely paralyzed with despair. It wasn't her. It couldn't have been. She didn't even know what I was talking about. So, who made the bed? There was another incident about a week after that. My mom was out with my auntie, and it was just me and my girlfriend at home watching television. Suddenly, we heard Johnny's bedroom door slam, and then a bunch of things shuffling around in the room. When we opened the door, his room was a mess. The furniture was all rearranged, and his clothes were all over the floor. We checked the windows to make sure it wasn't the wind, but everything was locked up airtight. Listen, like I said, I don't believe in that shit, but I can't explain it either. Something that definitely wasn't paranormal, though, was vandalism that was happening to my brother's gravestone. I make sure to visit his grave at least 4 times a week, and one day when I went there, I saw a bunch of graffiti on his stone. I thought it might be a cemetery-wide issue, but it was just his stone. He was clearly being targeted by rival gang members, even after death. These fuckers didn't have any respect for anything. The first time it happened, I just scrubbed it off and cleaned off his stone like new. But then it kept happening again and again. I went to the cemetery authorities and complained. "Can't you get more security in here at night?" I insisted. But they told me that since it's a public cemetery, they are limited on funds by the city. There's only so much that they can do. This really pissed me off. My brother couldn't get peace, even in death. So I decided that I would have to take matters into my own hands. I set up a camera on a nearby tree to try and capture the assholes who were defacing my brother's headstone. Then I would turn that evidence over to the cops, and maybe we can get these deadbeats behind bars. The first few nights, the camera recorded all night, and then I played back the footage in the morning. There was nothing. It was completely peaceful. There were no disturbances of any kind. Then on the 4th night, something happened that changed me forever. Again, I set the camera to record all night, and then in the morning I played back the entire tape. But instead of seeing a bunch of gangbanger vandals, I saw a little girl walking up to my brother's gravestone really late at night. The camera clock said 3:30 a.m. She just stood there for several minutes, almost as if she was talking to someone. This little girl looked to be about 2 or 3 years old. She was tiny, and she was alone. What the hell was she doing in the middle of a dark cemetery by herself? I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. Who was she and where was her mother? As I kept watching the video, it was clear that she was standing on my brother's grave talking to someone. But talking to who? There was nobody there. Was she talking to my brother? Was she dead too? Then suddenly I saw her walk away with her arms suspended in midair, as if she was holding the hand of somebody much larger, somebody that I couldn't see.
Soon the little girl was out of camera frame and the video stopped.
What the hell did I just see? I kept saying to myself. I watched the video over and over again, and I began to notice that the little girl was translucent. I could see through her. I'm losing my mind, I said to myself. I drove straight to the cemetery office and I showed them the video on my phone. I asked them if they had anyone buried in the cemetery who may be related to this little girl. Maybe she was visiting a dead relative here or something. But as soon as I showed the cemetery worker the video, he froze.
He said, yeah, he knew who the little girl was, which made me really happy.
But his face was pale white, like the blood had instantly drained out of it. He told me to hold on, as he made a phone call in the back. When he returned, he told me to wait. About 20 minutes later, a woman drove up to the cemetery and frantically ran inside. She looked like she had been crying and her hair was a mess. She was breathing heavily and she made a beeline right to me.
Show me the video, she shouted. What? I was shocked at how she was speaking to me. Show me the video, she screamed. All right, I said, pushing play.
When the short video had finished, the woman collapsed onto the ground in tears. That's her! That's her! That's her! That's her! She kept repeating, that's my little Gabriella! I still had no idea what was happening. Then the funeral worker pulled me aside and told me that the woman's daughter was named Gabriela Gonzalez. When she was 2 years old, she was murdered by her stepfather, beaten to death like an animal. Little Gabriela is buried in the same cemetery as my brother. Her mother believed that Gabriela was talking to my brother in the video, welcoming him home and leading him to heaven, hand in hand.
To this day, I cannot say if the video I have on my phone is paranormal or not, but all that I know is that my brother no longer visits us. There are no more unexplained occurrences at the house, and maybe, finally, he has his peace.